Hello 3C, it's me, I'm back, and today we are reading chapter 8 of Animal Farm. Exciting. Okay, let's just do it. We're on page 61. I'm going to read it to you and have a chat to you about what happens. It's a really dramatic chapter, a lot goes down, so let's get into it. Okay, page 61. A few days later, when the terror caused by the executions had died down, some of the animals remembered, or thought they remembered, that the sixth commandment decreed, "No animal shall kill another animal." And though no one cared to mention it in the hearing of the pigs or the dogs, it was felt that the killings which had taken place did not square with this. Clover asked Benjamin to read her the sixth commandment, and when Benjamin, as usual, said that he refused to meddle with such matters, she fetched Muriel. Muriel read the commandment for her. It ran, "No animal shall kill any other animal without cause." Somehow or other the last two words had slipped out of the animals' memory, but they saw now that the commandment had not been violated, for clearly there was good reason for killing the traitors who had leagued themselves with Snowball. Okay, now I know I've been talking about this a lot 3C, but this is yet another example of how the memory of these animals is constantly being challenged, and they don't trust their own memories, and their leaders are undermining what they remember and making them question themselves. And this is why literacy and education is so important. This is why having access to your own story and your own way of thinking about the world and being aware of what the rules are and when they change. Like, we can go back in the book and look at, on page 15, the list of commandments. The animals can't do that. And so by challenging and undermining their sense of intelligence and their ability to question, the pigs have made the animals feel that they can't rely on their own minds, their own brains, their own intelligences. And that's one of the many ways that the pigs are sort of controlling the animals, stripping them of power. It's not scary stuff. Throughout that year, the animals worked even harder than they had worked in the previous year. To rebuild the windmill with walls twice as thick as before, and to finish it by the appointed date, together with the regular work of the farm, was a tremendous labour. There were times when it seemed to the animals that they worked longer hours and fed no better than they had done in Jones's day. On Sunday mornings, Squealer, holding down a long strip of paper with his trotter, would read out to them lists of figures proving that the production of every class of foodstuff had increased by 200%, 300%, or 500%, as the case might be. The animals saw no reason to disbelieve him, especially as they could no longer remember very clearly what conditions had been like before the rebellion. All the same, there were days when they felt they would sooner have had less figures and more food. The animals can't see that they're being lied to. Their memories are flawed and being undermined. The pigs are using language and statistics to control the animals' experience of reality. So they have a sense deep down that they're working harder than they've ever worked, that they have less food than they've ever had, but they're being told, "Oh no, this is actually better. Like, the way you're living now is better than it was with Jones." And even though they sort of like, I could swear that I used to get more grain, I could swear that I used to get more sleep, I could swear that my life used to be better, they're constantly being told that that's not the case. And so they start to question their own sense of reality. All orders were now issued through Squealer or one of the other pigs. Napoleon himself was not seen in public as often as once a fortnight. When he did appear, it was attended not only by his retinue of dogs, but by a black cockerel who marched in front of him and acted as a kind of trumpeter, letting out a loud cock-a-doodle-doo before Napoleon spoke. Even in the farmhouse, it was said, Napoleon inhabited separate apartments from the others. He took his meals alone, with 2 dogs to wait upon him, and always ate from the Crown Derby dinner service which had been in the glass cupboard in the drawing-room. It was also announced that the gun would be fired every year on Napoleon's birthday, as well as on the other 2 anniversaries. So you see here now that this is not a society of equals. there was the promise at the beginning of the revolution that everybody would work, everyone would do the same amount of work, and everyone would get the benefits equally shared out. That was what the Russian people were promised as well at the beginning of the communist revolution. That's not what happened under Lenin and then under Stalin. That's not what's happening for the animals either. So they were sold this Marxist idea of equality and fairness, and it's a very noble idea that Marx had, a very beautiful idea in some ways. But then when you have an idea, it can sound really, really wonderful, but then sometimes when you actually put it into practice in real life, people are flawed. And so people get power and they get addicted to power and they like having nice things, and they don't want to share their nice things. And so Napoleon is really liking having all this extra power. He's liking having songs written about him and portraits being made of him, and he's liking having all this extra stuff, and he doesn't want to share that with the rest of the animals. And that's a dark part of human nature, and that's what Orwell's talking about here. You can have all these wonderful ideals, but it takes a very special leader to actually be able to put those ideals in place. And most people, when they get power, really want to keep that power, which is why we need a democracy wherein if somebody gets a little bit too sort of drunk on the power, we can get rid of him or her. But unfortunately for the animals, Napoleon is now very much set up as a dictatorial leader. He's got the dogs to protect him, there's the secret police, and he's using fear and the threat of execution, mind control, propaganda to make sure that the animals don't rise up against him like they did against Mr. Jones. Napoleon was now never spoken of simply as Napoleon. He was always referred to in a formal style as our leader, Comrade Napoleon, and the pigs like to invent for him such title as Father of all animals, Terror of mankind, Protector of the sheepfold, Duckling's friend, and the like. In his speeches, Squealer would talk with tears rolling down his cheeks of Napoleon's wisdom, the goodness of his heart, and the deep love he bore to all animals everywhere, even and especially the unhappy animals who still lived in ignorance and slavery on the other farms. It had become usual to give Napoleon the credit for every successful achievement and every stroke of good fortune. You would often hear one hen remark to another, "Under the guidance of our leader Napoleon, I have laid 5 eggs in 6 days." Or 2 cows, enjoying a drink at the pool, would exclaim, "Thanks to the leadership of Comrade Napoleon, how excellent this water tastes." The general feeling on the farm was expressed in a poem entitled Comrade Napoleon, which was compiled by Minimus, and which ran as follows. Friend of the fatherless, fountain of happiness, Lord of the swill bucket, oh how my soul is on fire when I gaze at thy calm and commanding eye, like the sun in the sky, Comrade Napoleon. Thou art the giver of all that thy creatures love, full belly twice a day, clean straw to roll upon, every beast great or small sleeps at peace in his stall. Thou watchest over all, Comrade Napoleon. Had I a sucking pig, ere he had grown as big, even as a pint bottle or a rolling pin, he should have learned to be fearful and true to thee. Yes, his first squeak should be, Comrade Napoleon. Okay, this poem is satirical. It's a parody of patriotic anthems that most countries have national anthems, but it's a parody. It's a joke. A parody is is a joke that points out the hypocrisy or flaws or silliness in something. So it's pointing out how Napoleon is using propaganda, using language to control the animals and to make them believe that he is something that he's not, that he's some great hero who's going to save them all. Like, that's not what he's doing. He's taking everything for himself and for his friends, and he's not sharing, and the animals are working horrible hours for nothing in return, but they're being told that he's this great leader who's looking after them. Stalin was like this, and there's, I think probably the best modern example is North Korea. Like, most North Koreans don't have any food. They don't have they're living in poverty. They don't have access to medical care. But Kim Jong-un lives in this incredible palace with all this amazing stuff. And so I think if you want to have a modern example of this type of how propaganda and control and fear can make people believe that somebody is this great leader and hero, almost godlike, when he's clearly not. I think North Korea is probably your best modern example of what's going on in Animal Farm. Okay, let's keep reading. Napoleon approved of this poem and caused it to be inscribed on the wall of the big barn, at the opposite end from the Seven Commandments. It was surmounted by a portrait of Napoleon, in profile, executed by Squealer in white paint. Meanwhile, through the agency of Whymper, Napoleon was engaged in complicated negotiations with Frederick and Pilkington. Okay, before I read this, I want to tell you about this because I think if you know the historical context, it might be easier to understand. So this is the Animal Farm version of when Stalin was in negotiation with the Allies and with Germany, Nazi Germany, at the outset of World War II. So we're talking 1937, 1936, 1938, those years before the beginning of World War II, and after, before Russia got into the war, wherein both sides were trying to convince Russia to sort of pick them, because of course having Russia on your side is if you're in a war, having Russia is a good thing. Like in World War I, the Allies beat Germany, but largely in a big way because they had Russia on their side. And in World War II, it was the fact that Germany tried to invade Russia at the same time they were fighting the English, that the Nazis eventually lost. But before the Russians went into World War II on the side of the Allies, Stalin actually made a surprise treaty with Hitler. He didn't really want to get into the war at all, Stalin. He didn't really want to be on the side of the Allies because they're capitalist. And even though he didn't really love Hitler either, he ended up choosing Hitler and signing a treaty with Hitler, but Hitler ended up betraying him. So Hitler represents Mr. Frederick. Mr. Pilkington is the Allies. And you have to know that, so Hitler and Stalin trying to sign this treaty together, but very quickly Hitler betrayed that treaty and invaded Russia. And that invasion caused the death of 25 million Russians, and it caused the destruction of a lot of the infrastructure that had been built up in Soviet Russia since the revolution. So all of these people have been working really, really hard to try and change Russia from an agricultural to a more industrialized nation. And that invasion through the west of Russia destroyed a lot of that work. So a lot of that infrastructure that had been built up, roads, all that kind of stuff, factories. So that's what you need to know, because that's going to be parodied here. Okay, so as we read, I'll sort of try and link it for you a bit more, but I just wanted to give you that insight into what was going on. Okay, so we're going to have a comparison here. Napoleon, of course, is Stalin, Russia. Frederick is Hitler, and Pilkington is the Allies. So that's the English, the Western Europeans, the French. Well, I guess the Dutch. I don't know. You guys were invaded. My knowledge of what happened to the Lower Dutch during World War II is limited. Okay, let's keep going. Let's quickly skip over the fact that I don't know what happened to the Netherlands that much about World War II. Okay, meanwhile, through the agency of Whymper, Napoleon was engaged in complicated negotiations with Frederick and Pilkington. The pile of timber was still unsold. Of the two, Frederick was the more anxious to get hold of it, but he would not offer a reasonable price. At the same time, there were renewed rumours that Frederick and his men were plotting to attack Animal Farm and to destroy the windmill, the building of which had aroused furious jealousy in him. Snowball was known to be still skulking on Pinchfield Farm. In the middle of the summer, the animals were alarmed to hear that the three hens had come forward and confessed that, inspired by Napoleon, they had entered into a plot to murder Napoleon. Inspired by Snowball, they had entered into a plot to murder Napoleon. They were executed immediately, and fresh precautions for Napoleon's safety were taken. 4 dogs guarded his bed at night, one at each corner, and a young pig named Pink Eye was given the task of tasting all his food before he ate it, lest it should be poisoned. This is a commentary on the fact that a lot of these fascist leaders, Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, basically all of them get super paranoid as time goes on, and they start to fear assassination, and so they start to take extra precautions for their own safety, and they always have guards. They go out in public less. It seems to be a pattern. Um, also, three hens coming forward and confessing, and they were the execution. We have no idea whether what the hens actually did, whether they're innocent of this, what's really going on there. The animals don't really know what's going on, and this fear that you're just going to get executed at any time. Really. The scariest thing I think about living in Stalinist Russia was just the constant fear. Like you never knew if you were being listened to, you didn't know if you were being watched, you didn't know who you could trust. At any moment, you or your husband or your wife or your family could just get the police could open the door and take you away to an internment camp, or take you away and you disappear and no one ever hears from you ever again. You just didn't know what was going to happen. So it was this time of fear. Like maybe if you knew it was going to happen from one moment to the next, you wouldn't be as scared, but you just like it could happen at any moment that you could get taken away and killed or sent to some camp. And it was the fear, I think, that was the worst thing for these people. And fear is becoming a bigger and bigger part of the lives of the animals on Animal Farm. They just don't know. They're waking up and friends are just not there anymore, and they're not knowing what happened to them exactly. Okay, at about the same time it was given out, so everybody was told, that Napoleon had arranged to sell the pile of timber to Pilkington. He was also going to enter into a regular agreement for the exchange of certain products between Animal Farm and Foxwood. Okay, so I think the pile of timber is sort of a symbol for the alliance between Russia and either the Allies or the Nazis. And certain products, the exchange of certain products would be like trade, so whether or not they're going to trade with either the Allies or the Nazis. So these are sort of the mirrors to the historical connections here. The relations between Napoleon and Pilkington, though they were only conducted through whimper, were now almost friendly. The animals distrusted Pilkington as a human being, but greatly preferred him to Frederick, whom they both feared and hated. As the summer wore on, and the windmill neared completion, the rumours of an impending treacherous attack grew stronger and stronger. So this is talking about how there was rumours that the Germans wanted to invade Russia, feel anti-German attitudes in Russia since World War I, of course. So there's more historical parallels there. Frederick, it was said, intended to bring against them 20 men all armed with guns, and he had already bribed the magistrates and police so that he could once get hold of the title deeds of Animal Farm, so that if he could once get hold of the title deeds of Animal Farm, they would ask no questions. So rumours are going around that Frederick is going to attack the farm, and that he's already in negotiation so that if he takes over Animal Farm, then it will become his. So it will become his property without any problems from the authorities. Moreover, terrible stories were leaking out from Pinchfield about the cruelties that Frederick practiced upon his animals. He had flogged an old horse to death. He starved his cows. He had killed a dog by throwing it into the furnace. He amused himself in the evening by making cocks fight with splinters of razor blades tied to their spurs. The animals' blood boiled with rage when they heard of these things being done to their comrades, and sometimes they clamoured to be allowed out to go in a body and attack Pinchfield Farm, drive out the humans, and set the animals free. But Squealer counselled them to avoid rash actions and trust in Comrade Napoleon's strategy. Nevertheless, feeling against Frederick continued to run high. One Sunday morning, Napoleon appeared in the barn and explained that he had never at any time contemplated selling the pile of timber to Frederick. He considered it beneath his dignity. He said to have dealings with scoundrels of that description. The pigeons who were still sent out to spread tidings of the rebellion were forbidden to set foot anywhere on Foxwood, and were also ordered to drop their former slogan of "Death to Humanity" in favour of "Death to Frederick." In the late summer, yet another of Snowball's machinations were laid bare. The wheat crop was full of weeds, and it was discovered on one of his nocturnal visits Snowball had mixed weed seeds with the seed corn. Okay, well that's not going to actually be the case. Snowball is nowhere in sight. Like, he doesn't come back to the farm. He's not doing these things. This is all, they use Snowball as an excuse for mistakes that the pigs are making with their own administration. So for whatever reason, the crop had not been properly weeded, something had gone wrong with the organization of that corn, and so instead of saying, oh, we made a mistake, and that's why we didn't organize this properly, and that's why it's full of weeds, they just blame an external enemy. And that's what would happen with Stalinist Russia as well. Like, instead of the government acknowledging that they maybe made a mistake, they would blame Trotsky or one of their other enemies for things going wrong, just to maintain their own power, essentially. Agander, who had been privy to the plot, had confessed his guilt to Squealer and immediately committed suicide by swallowing deadly nightshade berries. The animals now also learned that Snowball had never, as many of them had hitherto believed, received the Order of Animal Hero First Class. This was merely a legend, which had been spread some time after the Battle of the Cowshed by Snowball himself. So the animals are being once again forced to question their own memories. So they've been told, like, Snowball never received the Order of Animal Hero First Class. We know that he did. We can remember that moment after the Battle of the Cowshed. We know that he was a hero and that he's, put himself out there. He almost got shot, that he really performed these incredibly brave acts, and that he did get this Order of Animal Hero First Class. We can remember that, but the animals are being told, oh, that's not true. And they don't have a book. They can't go back and look and go, oh, no, but he did. He really did. And especially the less intelligent animals, it's easy to convince them that they're wrong about these things. This was merely a legend, which had been spread some time after the Battle of the Cowshed by Snowball himself. So far from being decorated, he had been censured for showing cowardice in the battle. Once again, some of the animals heard this with a certain bewilderment, but Squealer was soon able to convince them that their memories had been at fault. Okay, I'm going to stop this video now, 3C, and start up with part 2. I'll see you in a minute.